Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. The Cotto versus Margarito rematch is going to be, I'm sure, a great fight. It's going to be riveting, but it might not even be the best fight or even the best rematch on the fight card. I need to have you look at Pawel Wolak versus Delvin Rodriguez. These guys fought a great first fight, arguably a more compelling first fight, style-wise, than Margarito Cotto won. And I believe just based on styles, these guys are going to be completely combustible on the undercard of Cotto Margarito. This is definitely a fight, if you buy the pay-per-view, that you should tune in early for. It's an interesting fight between two very skilled professionals who are going at it. And let me just point out, let's talk about the first fight before I do. Let me just say, to fully understand how devastating that first fight was, before you even look at the footage of the fight, what I recommend you do is look at the post-fight video, which is up on YouTube from a great outfit, BoricuaBoxing.com. Right? I recommend them strongly. Again, it's BoricuaBoxing.com. Right? And they have an excellent post-fight video with interviews of both fighters. And when you see Wolak's face, you're going to see the hematoma that he had on his eye, and it is jarring. And when you see Delvin Rodriguez and he talks about the fight, you're going to learn a lot of what took place, because Rodriguez is very real with the interviewer and talks about his body, how he felt sluggish in certain rounds, and what he was trying to accomplish as the fight wore on. I think it's a riveting video. I think it's a great thing to look at in researching the rematch. Right? Now, let me just point out, I've made a video, and it's been a little controversial, where I've said there's no money in boxing. Let me just say this. Pawel Wolak, at the time of the first fight, was the number 3 contender for both the WBA and the WBO. Right? We're talking about a contender fighting out of New York, a boxing mecca. Right? And he was fighting Delvin Rodriguez, who himself had fought for titles in the past, some controversial scoring in his title matches, and he had been a contender in the sport. Right? And all I can say is, if you believe BoxRec.com, these guys got $15,000 each for that first fight. If you believe ESPN, the number jumps to $20,000 for that first fight. And keep in mind, the first fight was televised. And my point to you is, don't view it as $15,000 for one night's work. Understand that every time these guys fight, they have to prepare for a fight. They're in training. Each fight really is several months of work. So you see, even contenders like these, the number 3 WBA contender, which Wolak was, are getting $15,000 to $20,000, right, for fights. I understand both guys are getting close to 6 figures, if not 6 figures, for this fight. Of course, this fight's on a pay-per-view card, and how many fighters qualify for that level of attention, right? Let's just say this is the big payout that Pawel Wolak is getting in his career, and understand what it's taken to get to this point, right? Wolak is 30, Delvin Rodriguez is 31. Money's hard to come by in boxing. I stand by that earlier video. Okay? Now, let me also make another point too. Boxing is so inconsistent. It's stunning, right? Manny Pacquiao fights Antonio Margarito. Margarito's eye swells up, and the referee actually stops the fight, asked Margarito how many fingers he's holding up, and Margarito had to look out of his bad eye and had to tell the referee how many fingers the referee was holding up. Now contrast that with the Eric Morales-Marcos Maidana fight, where it's clear that Morales cannot see out of his swollen eye, and contrast that with the first Pawel Wolak Delvin Rodriguez fight, where I think it's clear as day that Wolak can't see out of his eye. If you look at the Boricua Boxing post-fight video, it's clear that Wolak isn't close to seeing out of his closed eye. And of course, both the Morales and Wolak fights were allowed to go the distance. Understand, boxing's not standardized. Even at the highest levels, the rules are unevenly applied, right? Now, let me just say this. This fight is a great style matchup. It's a lead puncher. Wolak, who calls himself the Raging Bull, and understand, that is a huge nickname to have, right? Certain nicknames, Sugar, right? Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Seals, pretty good fighter. Sugar Ray Leonard. If you're going to call yourself Sugar, you better be good, right? If you're going to call yourself Mini Tyson or White Tyson, as Selçuk Aydin and Ruslan Chagayev call themselves, you better be good. Well, if you're going to take the nickname of Jake LaMotta, you better be good. You better bring some heat. You cannot be the Raging Bull without bringing some rage, without bringing some heat. And that's exactly what Pawel Wolak does. He's one of the premier lead punchers in the sport. There is no off switch on Pawel Wolak. He's not a switch, right? He's not Lennox Lewis, who sometimes was a lead puncher, the Andrew Galata fight. Sometimes Lennox Lewis was a defensive counterpuncher, right? He's not a switch. Pawel Wolak is a lead puncher, period, right? He's not a counterpuncher. He's a pure lead puncher. And he's fighting Delvin Rodriguez, who plays the role of counter in the matchup. So you literally have a great style matchup here, right? And what I like with Pawel Wolak, you heard me criticize Manny Pacquiao for, being a lead puncher, but not wanting to get inside where he could put his forearms on his opponent to really try to lead inside. Pawel Wolak actually does try to get close enough to you where he can touch you with his forearm, right? He's that kind of fighter who's not just bringing volume. He's closing the distance on you. He wants to back you up against the ropes, right? So he can literally lean on you and rough you up inside. Now, let me say this. People know, especially in my book, that I'm a believer that when you have a lead puncher fighting a counter puncher, I believe that counter punchers, think Marquez, think Mayweather, right? I believe that counter punchers are the safe crackers of the sport. And with counter punchers, there are always two parts to every fight, right? There's the part where they're trying to figure you out. Think Juan Diaz in the first fight against Marquez. There's the fight where they're trying to figure you out, and then there's the part where they've cracked your code, right? They have figured you out. They know what works against you, right? There's always that eureka moment, right? Marquez, Diaz, that first fight, when Marquez realizes that Diaz is open for an uppercut, right? Those are the moments when suddenly the world changes. And it's my belief, and I've spent a chapter on this in GamblersAdvisory.com's How to Bet on Boxing, that 2009 book that, shameless plug, is available on Amazon and at GamblersAdvisory.com. I've spent a chapter just talking about how once a counterpuncher has cracked your code in the first fight, I believe that that counterpuncher is going to win the rematch. And that is why I am taking Delvin Rodriguez in the rematch. The first fight was ruled a draw, and it was interesting because 2 of the 3 judges had that first fight a draw. The third judge, though, had Rodriguez winning by 4 rounds. And if you look at the first fight, Rodriguez, who had not fought in several months, I think he hadn't fought in something like a year, cracks Wolak's code about halfway through the fight and actually pulls away in the last half of the fight. He figures out that he can hit Wolak with uppercuts, and he figures out how to grapple with Wolak so that he could hit him with hooks. Don't look at the punches. Look at the time between the punches. You're going to see Rodriguez actually figures out how to grapple with Wolak, right? Because you've got to tie up a pure lead, a guy who's coming in throwing punches. You've got to tie him up, and you've got to find ways to keep a hand free and to then pot shot with your counters. And I think Rodriguez figured out how to do that. Now, let me just add this. While I believe counterpunchers are the safecrackers of the sport, and you can literally look at a fight and say, okay, he hasn't cracked the code, then voila, he's cracked the code, the door is open. Think Zab Judah against Floyd Mayweather starting in the 4th round of their fight. That's after Floyd arguably loses the first 3 rounds of the fight and actually gets knocked down in the fight. Glove touches the canvas. Floyd figures out his buddy Zab Judah, right? There's a eureka moment when a counter is fighting a lead. Now, that's not to suggest that lead punchers aren't cerebral and aren't intelligent. Understand, there's a strategy to being a good lead puncher. Let me give you some examples, right? Rocky Marciano used to literally, while a guy's covered up, right? Marciano's coming forward, throwing bombs. He's not waiting for you. You're feeling him. While a guy's covered up, Marciano used to hit you in strategic places on your arm. He would hit you on your bicep, right? The logic was if he hit you on your bicep, you'd lose that arm over the fight. Couldn't cover up, couldn't throw it, couldn't hit him, right? George Foreman, in an interview, said that when he was fighting Michael Moore, this is older Foreman, when he was smarter, when he was fighting Michael Moore, he threw a right hand and pulled a punch, even though he had the clean right hand early, because he knew that if he hit Michael Moore full force with his right hand, and keep in mind, this is big George Foreman, heavy puncher. If he hit Moore flush with that right hand, he thought that Moore, who was fully alert at the beginning of the fight, fully rested, would realize that that right hand had big time power and would have been able to have gotten up off the canvas fully rested and would have stayed away from that right hand the rest of the fight. So Foreman actually pulled a punch because he didn't want Moore knowing how strong his right hand was. He wanted to save that right hand for later in the fight when he could land it with full force against an unsuspecting opponent. That's what he did. He took Moore's title, I believe, in the 10th round of that fight, right? Another lead punching story, Lennox Lewis gets embarrassed by Hasim Rahman. Rahman takes his title. In the rematch, Lennox Lewis, in an interview, said that he wanted the knockout because apparently there was some bad blood there between the two. He wanted the knockout. So he threw some right hands in the rematch just to see which way Hasim Rahman's head would go when he threw the right hand. So, of course, what he does later is he comes up after throwing some right hands and figuring out that Rahman's shooting this way. What he does is he throws the right hand this way, knocks out Rahman cold. By the way, I hear that that's an Emmanuel Stewart trick that Stewart teaches his fighters to do, right? So there's a science to being a lead puncher, and I'm just telling you, Pawel Wolak is a scientist. He actually knows what he's doing in the ring. He comes in, he's trying to rough you up, he's trying to eliminate the space between you and him. And when he gets inside, then he starts to do slick moves like leaning on you, having his elbow on you, hitting you with hooks and stuff like that. Here's the problem. He comes in too square, right? Well, first, he has a bigger problem. The bigger problem is he's always coming in, right? If you're a counterpuncher and a guy's always coming in, instead of being coy and playing a Vitaly Klitschko game, am I coming in? Am I staying outside? If the guy's always coming in, you can force him to run into your punches. So, while backing up, Juan Manuel Marquez forced Manny Pacquiao to run into several right hands, right? That's Wolak's biggest problem. He has some other problems. He comes in too square. Think leverage. If you're throwing a ball, you want your lead foot to be in front of you to get leverage, right? You don't throw the ball as far or as hard if both of your feet are together, if they're square. And if you look at Wolak on film, he comes in too square. He doesn't come in with his feet set so he can get leverage on the punches. As a result, Wolak doesn't punch that hard, right? Just watch BoricuaBoxing.com's post-fight interview with Delvin Rodriguez, right? Just Google Delvin Rodriguez's assessment of Pawel Wolak's punching power, right? Wolak doesn't have one punch knockout power. The other problem too is when you see Wolak and he comes in, kind of like Mike Tyson, right? Wolak is vulnerable to an uppercut. You remember the punch that ended Mike Tyson's heavyweight reign, the first reign, the real reign. It was a Buster Douglas uppercut that took out Mike, right? Then, of course, while Mike was hurt, Douglas steps forward with the right hand, but the uppercut did the damage. You can hit Wolak with uppercuts. Delvin Rodriguez has already cracked that part of the code. And understand, cracking the code means he knows how to tie up Wolak when he comes in. He knows how to hit Wolak with uppercuts. He knows how to hit Wolak with hooks. I like Delvin Rodriguez in this fight. I think he beats Wolak even in New York, where Wolak is very popular, right? This is a high-risk play. Understand the first fight ended in a draw, right? But I just believe, and it's my own bias, it's one of my core theories. We all have theories on fights. This is one of mine. I just believe that when a counterpuncher has cracked your code in the first fight, he's going to win the second fight. Here, that counterpuncher is Delvin Rodriguez. If I were to straddle the play, I would straddle it Rodriguez to win the fight, and I believe he's the underdog. Rodriguez to win the fight, straddled against Wolak by KO. Even though Wolak doesn't have one punch knockout power, he is persistent. He is the raging bull. He's going to be in your face the entire fight. There is a chance that Rodriguez cracks and just gets overwhelmed by the volume and the fight gets stopped. But what I think is a more likely scenario is Delvin Rodriguez continues to tie up Wolak when he comes inside, hits him with uppercuts, hits him with hooks, beats him in the rematch. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. By the way, I understand the Wolak people say, hey, our guy had an eye hematoma. He couldn't see out of one eye for half the fight, and yet he still got a draw. Beware of that argument. But my point is whether Wolak has one eye or two eyes, I believe he only fights one way. And Delvin Rodriguez has cracked his code. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Visit us at predictboxing.blogspot.com and gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.